where I gained a lot more insight was realizing exactly what you're saying, is that it's possible to not have to experience the pain in order to go after and create that pleasure. And, really, we talk about this on the Investor Mindset Show. It's the name your number process, right? And a key part of naming your number is setting that target, like where you want to be, but it's the vision that comes along with that. And when you can sit down and identify, these are the things in my life that I no longer want to have a part of my future life. Welcome back to the show. I'm excited today. I have Wally Bressler in the studio. How you doing today, Wally?
I'm super, super good, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, I'm super excited to dive in. You've got a really interesting story, definitely one of those comeback stories, and you're having a lot of success in entrepreneurship, and you're really, you're running a great business, you're earning income, and, 22 years of life in business and life coaching, 25 years of sales and real estate experience. You've conducted over 40,000 coaching sessions via one-on-one calls. You've really been able to make an impact for a lot of people. I'm excited to share some of that with the audience, but more importantly, I really am excited to share the example of what is possible when you do shift your mindset, when you change the way you think. And the path that you're on is to build an operating business, to create money today and to exit, but also to talk about, what it is that freedom path looks like. So we're going to get into all of that and more in today's episode. So you guys are in for a good one. With that said, Wally, you ready to dive into it?
Let's rock and roll.
So looking back at earlier in your life, tell me what influences from your childhood shaped who you are today.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think everybody has influences from their childhood that shape who they are. It just so happens that all of my influences were pretty negative, unfortunately. I part of what I do is I help people work on overcoming the challenges that keep them from being successful as entrepreneurs or business people. My parents were good people. They were from New York. We talked a little bit about our shared Italian heritage earlier. When you grew up in an Italian family, the three modes of communication are food, getting hit, and getting yelled at. I mean, that's pretty much right. It's pretty much how you're communicated with, and so, my parents, they had tough childhoods from their parents. I mean, standard Italian, being raised in an Italian family. So my dad was really, really verbally and emotionally abused, as was his sister. So I kind of got the same thing. One of my punishments when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old was to be sent to bed without dinner. And that really was the start of a binge eating disorder that lasted about 45 years. I was sexually abused when I was 10. I started looking at pornography when I was 11. I started having sex regularly when I was 12, and I was bullied the entire time. So, by the time I was 14, I really did not like myself, and I was, I was literally addicted to sex and pornography and food. And then we grew up poor. And so I had this less than attitude, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I was always striving to bring in more money, but I was taking that money and wasting it and trying to build up my image and my acceptance, and by buying people's love. And, I probably burned about $5 million so far in my life doing stupid things with it, And so what that shaped for me is that externally I was an overachiever, what I'm saying? I mean, graduated like in the upper 18% of my high school class. I played college football. I led it all 4 years. I graduated from one of the top 15 liberal arts colleges in the country. I was making $100,000 back in 1998. By the time I was 28, married, had 4 kids. I mean, externally I was doing great, but on the inside I was literally dying. And my life was filled with self-sabotage. As I did well, I walked it back. As I did well, I walked it back. And then when I was trying to think here, when I was trying to think of 2005, I would have been 37 at that time. So 37, 38, 2005, 2006, the real estate market was the Wild West. If you could fog a mirror, you got a loan, so I was a real estate agent, and I was also I was doing real estate investing. And the guy that I was working with, decided to take advantage of some of the friendly lending that was available then. And he lied at about $15 million worth of mortgages. And I was involved with him. And although I wasn't trying to steal any money, I was in a situation where I was associated with it. So I had to accept responsibility for that. And so, we ended up getting in trouble, and I spent 366 days in federal prison.
Wow.
For one count of mail fraud.
Before we get deeper into it, what I just want to say is, first off, thanks for being vulnerable. I find a lot of people who are successful, they fear opening up that vulnerability and sharing about some of those challenges, but yet we all face them. We all face them. Either we had this perfect childhood, which nobody has, and that's the kind of story and image we want to project externally, or we had challenges, and those challenges, they shape us and motivate us to do things in our life. And a lot of those things we get rewarded for, like being an external overachiever. But then internally, something's missing, something's off, something is not being fulfilled, and we try to fix it externally rather than going inside. And it's one of the things that I think is so important, is when we can really dive into ourselves and understand the way that we think and what we believe, that it actually leads to some of the greatest change. And so we'll get into some of that from an investment standpoint today, but I can relate. I have a totally different story, but I can relate to some of the pain and challenges that have driven you the same way they've driven me. And I guarantee they've driven a lot of the folks who are listening as well. And so when you look at that, how did that lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I've just, with the self-sabotage, I've lost everything in my life 4 times. In fact, when I left prison in 2014, I had 54 cents to my name. I had to live in somebody's house. They had to lend me a car. People had to give me clothes. They had to feed me. And I was, I got back into doing what I was doing, but it was a tough time. And, every time that I've lost something, I've always come back stronger. And I don't think there's any replacement for resilience in life.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking to people that are good business people. They're good W-2 people, or they're good 1099 people. They've made good money. They've paved a good path for themselves. But, the difference between good and great, or, the difference between the horse that wins and the horse that comes in second is minuscule, but the reward is significant. And so, does that make sense? And so I think what's happened is I had a choice. You have a choice every time. You can just curl up and roll up into a little ball and get in the fetal position and say, okay, that's it. I'm just not going to try. You're going to be like, you know what? That's not the legacy I want for myself. And so, because I just didn't want to continue to live like that and be that person, I just made the decision that I was going to continue to fight and do what I do, because there's always a way. And I think I could be wrong, but I think the statistic is that some of the wealthiest people in the world have lost everything at least 7 times. I'm good with 4. I don't think I need that experience anymore. I learned my lesson, but I think that's the measure of somebody is, because things happen, things happen in people's lives. Divorces happen, deaths happen, markets happen, and, the average age right now is like 79 and a half. And, I follow David Sinclair. He's I guess you'd call him, he's I don't know the word, like a life extension. Longevity guy. He's like a longevity expert from Harvard. And he said in 10 years, he thinks people will be able to live another 40 years. Right. Yeah. So, even if you're 40 or 50, you still have several years left. Even if you lose everything, you have to be willing to just fight, use those examples and fight back to keep going. And that, I would say, that's how it served me most, is that I know if I lose something, I'll be able to go back and get it all back and even more. And I'm stronger, more resilient, and I can be actually happy while it happens.
That confidence to know that you can come back from adversity is a really strong one. And I really believe that everybody's got a story, right? And parts of those stories can be examples that we want to follow. And parts of those stories are warnings, things we want to avoid, we want to learn from. And so for you, starting out, experiencing that early in your life, and then, obviously you've been investing in real estate, you've been doing sales, you've been coaching, you've got a lot of different experiences. At some point, you got connected to something that was a mistake. You got connected to something where you ended up having to pay for that mistake. And for a lot of people, that shame that comes along with it is very difficult to overcome. A lot of people do not choose to overcome it. And so you coming out of that position and then having that comeback story is something that people do love to see. So tell us, you went away, you came out. Yeah. What was it at that point that led you to say, you know what, I made a mistake, but I'm not going to let it define me negatively. I'm going to let it define me from a greatness standpoint. What led you down that path and what kept you moving forward?
Right on. Right on. Good question. So first thing I'm going to call it a bad choice versus a mistake.
Sure.
And the distinction in my mind, Steve, is that a mistake is when you do something and you didn't know what you were doing. You know what I'm saying? And even though I wasn't trying to steal money, I was looking the other way on things, and I knew that things weren't going well, and I continued to participate. So let's call it a bad choice. Let's own it, accept it. So there's more to the story, if I can share it with you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, when I went to prison, when you go to prison, you're supposed to learn lessons, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, and so I learned some lessons, but I never really worked on the things I needed to work through internally. So when I got out of prison, I kind of got back into my old habits, and I gained all the weight I had lost back. And I was, having inappropriate relationships with women and stuff like that. I was pretty much going back to do that. And then I met somebody in 2014, and I was with them for 4.5 years. Very faithful, wanted to make it work, bought her an engagement ring, asked her to marry me. She said yes. And after 4.5 years, she would not move from the state she lived in back to Texas. And then I broke up with her, and I found out a couple of days later that she was actually married the entire time we were together. And so you would think that prison would have been rock bottom, but it wasn't, because I still had a lot to learn. But, that was, for me, that was like the last bad decision in all the bad decisions. And I decided a month later that I was going to take my own life. And by the grace of God, I'm still here. Okay. I'm not succeed. I didn't do it. So, but at that point, I was in so much pain, and I had a decision to make. I had 4 kids. Okay. I have 4 children. My dad died when I was 23. I was not, my sister was 19. My brother was 17. My mom died at 64. I was only 30, and I decided, I'm like, I can let my kids go through that I did and not break the cycle, or I could break the cycle and say, I'm not going to let this happen anymore. And so I made the decision, and really it is a decision. Does that make sense? It's not like coffee or tea, chicken or beef, sit or stand. But it is a decision. It's the same function. I just made the decision that I was going to fight because I wanted more out of life, and I was sick of having what I had, And so that's when I decided to fight. And, I hired somebody to help me. We talked twice a week. And I mean, I unloaded a lot of baggage, but it really is that decision that I'm going to use that pain, that leverage. And we all have leverage. Like, there's people we're talking to today that probably would like to get out of their W-2 job and be self-employed, but they're not, for some reason they haven't given themselves or found the leverage reason. Or there's people that are self-employed and they have properties, but they haven't created a business or a life where they can actually step away from it, have it run by themselves. Right. So there's always a leverage point in there for everybody, where if you create enough pain, for lack of better terminology, right? Enough pain, enough, I'm not happy with where I am, and get tied into it, you can get to the next level. And that's really what it was for me, is that I was just sick of feeling that pain of, working hard, having it all go away and whatnot. So that's really what and listen, last thing real quickly, like, nobody has to hit rock bottom to make this happen. That's my mission in life, is that you don't need to hit rock bottom. We have enough whys, we have enough who's and what's in our life right now, no matter where we are, to use as a leverage point to get where we want to go. We just have to look at it and decide we're going to let it work for us.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we share some very similar views on life, and there's been times where I've hit rock bottom personally, or I've been in a really, really challenging place, whether that's emotionally, whether that's financially, whether that's with family, whatever that might be. And those places is typically where I've had enough pain to then make change happen.
Sure.
But where I gained a lot more insight was realizing exactly what you're saying, is that it's possible to not have to experience the pain in order to go after and create that pleasure. And, really, we talk about this on the Investor Mindset Show. It's the name your number process, right? And a key part of naming your number is setting that target, like where you want to be, but it's the vision that comes along with that. And when you can sit down and identify, these are the things in my life that I no longer want to have a part of my future life. This is no longer part of who I am going to be. And you pair that alongside this beautiful vision of the kind of things you're going to do, the way you're going to live, the ability to have control of your time, to really be able to support and enrich the lives of all these people around you. When you have that kind of driving purpose vision, and you attach that to your investment philosophy, and every single dollar that you earn in your job or in your business then is then directed into investments that help you support creating the amount of income that you need so that you never have to work again, but maybe you want to. Maybe you're going to work forever. I don't really plan on ever retiring. I love my mission, what I'm doing, because I found purpose and fulfillment from it. But for many people out there, the end vision, the end goal is for them to spend time with their family and no longer work. But when you can create that vision, you don't have to go into that much pain. You're able to then identify the pain that you'll have by not moving forward and not taking action. And I think that's such an important part of the conversation. And so for you right now, I
did it the hard way.
You did it the hard way. We've all been there in different ways and had different challenges along the way. But at this point, now you're running a successful business and you've got great earned income that's coming in. What does that freedom vision look like for you? What does your new life look like?
I just, I had the best year of my life financially last year, actually, and I was able to do some things that, I was able to write a book and publish a book, and I was able to get on a TV show so I could spread my message. So, I mean, God definitely, allowed me to do what I needed to do to make that happen. So I'm super grateful for that. My vision, and I think, it's interesting, and I talk to, because I work with self-employed people all day long. I've been selling real estate coaching, either myself or for other companies, probably since 2000 and let's call it 6. And to the person, everybody wants to be the true CEO of their company. Meaning, if they want to work, great. If they don't want to work, that's fine too. And there's a difference between having to work and wanting to work. I think that's important,
Totally.
Like I'm going to work until as long as I can. It's great if you want to, but if you have to, it's a different story, right? So,
totally. Exactly.
Big distinction. So, they want to be the true CEO of their company. If they can work, great. If they want to work, great. If they don't, that's fine too. But they want to leverage the efforts of other people. Does that make sense? Right. And so for me, I'm doing what I'm doing now to make enough money so that I can start putting money into building a real estate portfolio so that I can make sure that my kids have money for the rest of their lives. Right. And in such a way, not that they're going to blow it, but that they're taken care of. My immediate goal is my son's getting his real estate license. And so we're going to help him. But I had made a promise. I said, I'll teach you everything that I know, but we're going to build a portfolio. And the first thing is that we're going to build a portfolio that pays you and your 3 sisters $100,000 a year. That's the first stop. Okay. And so that's that, right. And so that's the goal for me. That, and obviously that'll generate income for me too. But that the goal is to create that so that we have that passive income. And I built some of that before. I just squandered it all, But the goal is to take the money that I have here, that I'm making from my business here, and parlay it into some real estate, and also take advantage of some private financing that's out there, using other, the whole OPP thing, right? Other people's OPM, and leverage that to the extent that I can. I mean, you always need to have a little bit of your money in there, right? You have some skin in the game, but create that so that my kids don't have to do what I did, which is live paycheck to paycheck until I was, essentially 51 years old.
Yeah.
Right. But that, it's funny. I always joke about the, the deal or no deal thing. Like if you watch Deal or No Deal, Howie Mandel keeps asking, he says, do you have the courage to go all the way down so that your case is the last case and believe that it's $1 million case? And I think if you want to build that kind of life for yourself, you're going to have some courage. You're going to have to make some tough decisions. You're going to have to, kind of, do the Dave Ramsey thing, which is delay gratification, But I think you also have to take some, I don't want to say some chances, but you got to make some educated guesses and really make good decisions for yourself. But ultimately, my goal long-term is I'm going to work on speaking regularly, do the coaching that I do. I have my book, I have another book coming out soon, but really whatever money I can generate from what I'm doing now, and maybe create an online course for some residual income, but take that money and put it into something that's going to take care of my kids, and not like putting money in a bank that'll just hopefully grows at a certain period of time, but have a real estate portfolio that will put off money for the rest of it as long as they have it.
So you're working for today. I mean, obviously you're working, you have more of a purpose than just this, but it's really that legacy for your children. You want to make sure that you can set them up for success. And so all of the money that you're earning today can then get funneled towards that purpose of knowing that they're going to have their basic needs met and then some, and being able to teach them some of those lessons along the way. So I think that's a beautiful vision. And that's a vision that is very achievable. One, you're a real estate professional. You understand how to go buy, operate, manage, and you can be that person who's out there being the expert because you bring that expertise to the table, and now is a perfect time for you to apply it. So in that circumstance, in that situation, I mean, in your business today, your income comes primarily from coaching and training others in the sales world. Is that right?
Speaking engagements and things like that for the most part. Yep, absolutely.
And so that money, that income that you're earning in the business, is it fairly consistent? Is it lumpy from month to month, or what's the expectation?
I built it up. I mean, my goal this year is to bring in about $600,000, about 50 grand a month. I mean, I'm based on where I'm trending, but I mean, I'm not. Do you talk about money here? I've never been on the show before. Do you talk about specifics or not?
We talk about money. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, obviously it's the money show. So, last December, I made about just under $40,000, which is a good December for me. You know what I'm saying? And so see, the great thing about that I'm fortunate with is I have a really good reputation in the real estate industry. So I get a lot of people coming to me asking for help and stuff like that. So, but my course is starting to take off, and I have a class that helps people overcome procrastination, self-sabotage, perfectionism and stuff like that. And so, full classes were 25 grand to me. So,
yeah,
and if I can get 2 classes a month, which is really what I'm working towards, that's what I'm looking to do. So, but the goal then is, my expenses, I have 4 kids, so they're not cheap, but, but the whole point is to,
what do you think you spend every month living the life you live?
Right now, my monthly expenses are just under $14,000 a month.
Okay. Yep. So in comparison with what you're earning, you've got a lot of additional cash to be able to funnel away for future investable assets.
My kids are my biggest overhead, and then me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have a lot of overhead. I mean, I've got an ISA and an assistant. You know what I'm saying? So I've got that leverage for appointment setting and somebody who can take care of, like, Nadina and Tab. They work together to set this up.
Yeah.
And so I run pretty lean.
And so just so the audience knows, in case there's any interest, tell me who's kind of that ideal client. Who do you work with on a regular basis?
I mean,
what are you doing for them?
Sure. Great question. And thank you for the opportunity to share this. So I work with salespeople, entrepreneurs, really anybody or other people, but basically right now, because of where I come from, salespeople and entrepreneurs, I work with them to help them identify what's keeping them from getting their life and business to the next level. Okay. Mm-hmm. People are procrastinators, they're perfectionists, right? 60% of salespeople have a very strong need for approval, which keeps them from doing the things they need to do to hit their sales goals, right? People who can't stick to a calendar, people who can't reach their goals, people who can't stick to a diet, who can't go to the gym, who are self-saboteurs. There's some stuff going on inside from when they were a kid. I mean, I use my own self as an example, and I help people identify what those things are and teach them how to overcome them so they can free themselves to create the life and business they want for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can see that that's a huge market. There's a lot of people who need that. A lot of people. So there's a really a great growth opportunity for the business. At the end of is the business focused on earning money today? It's all about income, or is the reason the business is being built for an exit?
Yeah. So ultimately what I'd like to be able to do is to teach some people what I do and be able to step out of it and have them help people the way that I do. I would like that kind of leverage. I mean, anytime you grow a business, you bring in leverage, there's a whole other dynamic of managing people and all that other stuff. So, and I think, if you've been in business long enough, people that are great salespeople aren't great managers. So
totally.
I know that about myself. Right. So, but I would like to be able to, at some point, have it continue to generate the income that I'm generating without me, so I can continue to have that cash flow to put into things that I want to do,
Totally. So really, like, you're building this business in order for it to generate income today, but you're also hoping, maybe not planning for an exit, but hopefully planning that you can put some people or systems in place. You can keep gathering that income without having to manage it. And so when it comes to your personal financial situation, you're making great money. You've got a lot of your personal needs met. It sounds like at the end of the day, really what you're shooting for is you want to be out of the business. Like you're long term, that's the goal. And if you're out of the business, what would you do? Like if the business was 100% taken care of, or you're no longer running it, but you're making the same amount of money, where's that focus going to be? What would you do with your time? What does your life look like from that place?
So, a great question. So just when you go to prison, some things happen financially in your life that you can imagine aren't so good. Your credit doesn't do so well.
Yeah.
I spent probably $100,000 or a little less keeping myself from going to prison for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and because I was terrible with my money, I spent it as it came in. I really didn't have a lot of money. So I'm also trying to build some retirement for myself as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm getting out of this as soon as somebody else might, if that makes sense. But to answer your question, I most importantly, I want to be there to guide my kids, and to be there for them and to be a good, dad and granddad and teach them about life. I mean, look, and my parents were not bad people. I want to say that. I know they loved me. They just weren't good parents. And I think a lot of people's parents were good people, just weren't good parents because they didn't know what to do. But, I don't want my kids to have to live paycheck to paycheck and not understand how to deal with money. So they all have three oldest have credit cards, and all four of them have a debit card, even my 16-year-old. I don't want my kids to not know how to have a good relationship with somebody, which means I need to be around, not a helicopter parent, but I got to be there to answer questions and give them feedback and help them through the tough times. I want them to know how to manage their money and how to deal with their money and stuff like that. So not that I want to be involved in every minute of their life, but I want to be available to them and be a guiding source for them. In addition to that, one of the things that happens when you go through a life like I did is I've never really had a meaningful relationship with a woman. When you spend the majority of your life getting approval from women through sex, they tend not to want to hang around for a while. So I'd like to find my forever person and build a life and start doing some stuff like that. I've got some charity work that I'd like to do and really start giving back to people and mostly just, making sure that I set my family up so that, when that dash finished getting etched on my tombstone, that it ends the right way. And that whenever I go, hopefully I got plenty of time, that I know my kids are going to be able to live their life as adults with the knowledge and the resilience and what they need so that they can live great lives for themselves without having to go through all the crap that I went through. Because they went through enough stuff, I'm saying? And my kids are pretty resilient. I went to prison for a year. They didn't see me. Their mom had to go get a job. So, they're tougher than the average kid, but I want to make sure that they're in good shape.
Well, this is what's so great is that you're in a position where you're having success, you're earning great income, you've got, a great family, you've got some personal things that you want out of your life. And the business that you're running is a vehicle to help get you there, right?
Yes.
It's the vehicle that gives you the money to know that you've got the security, to know that you're not going to be back in a similar situation. And then it's also a vehicle to be able to invest into hard, real assets that produce income and appreciation. And, obviously you're a professional in the real estate space, but just for those who are listening, backing into really what you've described as your number, right? We indirectly got to your number. You had said, I want, you've got 4 kids. You want them all to be able to make $100,000 a year off of these investments. Well, that's $400,000 a year. So if we back into what that freedom number needs to look like, you are a person who's most likely going to take more of an active path than some others. Many people listening are going to invest passively. They're going to invest with an expert who is going to go out there and buy, operate, manage that property for them. And they're going to share in that profit together. And so there's different strategies to getting there faster. But what's so cool is knowing that if you need and want $400,000 a year, which to some is going to seem like very little and to others is going to seem like a lot. But you with that number of 400,000 at an 8% interest rate, meaning you've put this into something, it's going to produce 8% a year and it's going to produce 8% a year forever. You only need $5 million of investable assets. If you produce 10%, you only need 4. Right. And so what's so cool about this, and it's such a great example of how achievable it is to be able to create that kind of freedom, to know that your family has that legacy covered and that you can teach them while you're doing it along the way, that the money that you're making every single year, the more that you can carve off and invest into something that has a fast rate of doubling.
Right
like, if you're investing into something and it doubles every 3 years, and you can invest, 200,000 in 3 years, that 200,000 is now 4. If that 400,000 is now 8 in 9 years, and that 800,000 is now 1.6 in 12. Sure. So if you kept doing that over and over again, within a short period of time, you're going to be in that position. And for you, trading time for money, which is something that you're willing to do by being active, you can increase that rate of return, or you can just trade your money for time, and you can maybe go a different path where somebody else does all of that work for you, and you collect the upside.
Or your money for money. That works too, right? So
exactly.
I'm not looking to stop at 100,000, but that's the first stop. I mean, it's not going to be anytime soon, obviously, but it's probably going to be hopefully some commercial real estate too, which obviously generates a lot more income. I don't know that I necessarily want 400 doors that are producing $1,000 a month. I'm saying that's a lot of freaking properties. I'm saying, but so it's gonna.
And I strongly recommend it. Right, like I started my career flipping houses. Bought and sold 200 houses, and then got out of that, moved into, large commercial multifamily where we're buying 200 to 300 unit buildings. You get some more economies of scale. But what's so cool about the business is that there is additional economies of scale that are available as you keep growing and scaling. And so depending on the strategy you use, there's a lot of ways to end up getting to that place. What I'm curious is what is it going to feel like to know that you've reached that? What is that going to feel like to know that your family is taken care of, that you've overcome this adversity, that you've got, this rock solid investment portfolio that will leave a legacy long after you're gone?
And it's so great that you asked that, because that is really the key ingredient of the emotion. Is really the leverage point of achieving any goal, right? Zig Ziglar says you're not fully involved in your goals until you're emotionally involved in those goals. And that vision, while important, needs to be tied to some very specific emotions and feelings that are associated with that, or you're not going to do what you have to do to make it happen. So I appreciate you asking that question. I remember when I started working with my counselor, Kelly, about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, she asked me, she said, "Tell me about the happiest day of your life." And I sat there for 10 minutes and I said, "I don't think I've ever had a happiest day of my life." Because I hadn't, because I was just very unhappy and sad and angry. And so, I would say believe it or not, the best years of my life have been the last 3 years of my life, which I'm very grateful for. And I don't know, for the longest time, I couldn't tell you how anything felt, because I just numbed my feelings all the time. And I'm sorry to take the long route to this, but, here's the thing, my dad died when I was 23, and every day from 23 until age 51, I thought I was going to die, or I felt like I was going to die. I was wondering how I was going to die. I used to say to God, when I would go to bed, I'd be like, "Can I just have another day, please? I know I didn't do a good job. Can I have another day?" But I can honestly tell you that, and not that I want this to happen, but I feel like if I had to, I would be able to, close my eyes one last time peacefully and be at peace to know that my kids are taken care of. That's what it's going to feel like. That I'm not going to worry what happens after that, because I know my kids will be good. Does that make sense? Like, I'll have peace of mind that whatever happens after that, it is what it is, because I know my kids are squared away, and that's what it's going to feel like, is that I'm completely carefree, and I know that my kids are taken care of, and whatever happens is going to happen. And if it's time for me to go, it's time for me to go.
And it really, what I'm hearing is, you're going to feel peace.
Yep.
You're going to feel at ease. You're going to feel like, that you did what you were meant to do here, and everything else is a bonus.
Right on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this has been really, really awesome. You've got an incredible story. It's very inspiring, and I'd love to be able to dive deeper into it in the future. With that, for the listeners who have been listening, they've been inspired. Leave us with two things. The first thing, what do you recommend for those people who are going through tough times? How do they start going down and finding the right path, like you did, towards creating a better life? And then the second piece, as we close out, is let people know how they can get in touch with you and, learn more about what you're doing.
Sure. So thanks for that. And thanks for the kind words. The solution to every problem starts with awareness. right? I can't hit a target if I don't know what the target looks like. You've been talking about reverse engineering from the end back to current day. I can't reverse engineer from having $1 million in residual income every year. I can't if I don't know that that's what I'm shooting for, right? So same thing with solving problems. I mean, I can't fight an enemy that I don't know exists. So a real simple task if people want to do this. After we're done here, go grab a couple of note cards. You perfectionists, it doesn't have to be a note card. It can be a piece of paper. It can be anything. So don't feel like you have to wait until you get a note card. So I get ahead of that with some people. Being a recovering perfectionist myself, I just want you to ask a real good question. What is the source of my, and whatever it is, procrastination or perfectionism, or, what is the source of my inability to take my investment business to the next level? Whatever it is, write it down. Okay. And then what I want you to keep one with you for the rest of the day and look at it. I want you to put one next to your nightstand and read it a couple times before you go to bed. Because your subconscious remembers everything that you've ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen. It remembers it all. But it's all stacked like a big sandwich. And as soon as you ask your subconscious that tonight when you go to bed, it's going to go, there it is. I'm just going to pull it out and it's going to say, this is it. And then you're going to know, and it's usually going to be something that happened between the time you were born and the time you were 12. And now you'll know exactly what it is that's causing that problem. And then you can go to work on it. Okay. So, you don't have to let your past define it. Anything that's happening in your life that is keeping you from getting the results you want, especially as it relates to your emotions, is probably not your fault. It was probably a program that happened when you were a kid. But the thing is you can do something about it now that you know what it is. So I think that's the first thing I'd like to leave people with. If you would like to talk to me for free, for no cost, you can go to my website, triggersalessystem.com, and you can set up a 30-minute call on my calendar. No cost. And I will, if you don't know what it is, I will find it for you. It takes me about 15 minutes and I will tell you exactly what it is. And, this is kind of interesting, Steve, because there's a tremendous amount of relief that comes with it, but then there's also work to be done at that point. Does that make sense? Like people are like, I see people's faces are like, wow, I never realized that was the reason, and then they're like, oh, but now that they're aware of it and they can see it, they can do something about it. And that, that awareness is so invaluable. So triggersalessystem.com, half hour on my calendar, no cost, no sales pitch, just come on and let's chat. And then we'll go from there. I really appreciate your time today. And thanks for giving me a chance to share my story. And I know what you're doing is invaluable to people because everybody needs somebody to bring strategies and things to them outside of what they're normally doing to get them to take this next step to get where they want to go. So I'm sure what you're doing is super invaluable as well.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for making impact with the audience. Thanks for offering to make an impact directly one-on-one. And it was great diving in with you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. God bless everybody and be kind to yourself.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.